People who used to not believe in ghosts but do now. What experience changed your mind?
Silent scan.
I grew up in a very scientific family. I never knew my dad's stance on ghosts, but they were never talked about, so it really didn't matter. One day when I was in high school, we were eating dinner, and I decided to ask my dad about our old house and moving into it when I was just a baby. So he told me a story. Apparently when we moved into this house, we lived there about a week before we started to receive gifts once a week. Every Friday morning, my dad told me that there would be some sort of handcrafted gift sitting on the mantle of our fireplace. My dad was reasonably freaked out by this because we were the only ones with keys to the house, and the last owner moved well out of state. So, he informed the local police, and they decided to patrol the property every Friday night looking for intruders. They found nothing, and as you could imagine, the gifts kept coming. So my dad told me they eventually gave up, and feeling helpless he went to our local church. Eventually he had a priest come and bless the house, and we stopped receiving the gifts. What really freaked me out about this was the fact that my dad never believed in ghosts, and didn't mention once that a ghost was causing these gifts to appear. He's an engineer, so he always tries to debunk people's paranormal stories with a realistic explanation, but he was 100% serious with this story. One of the gifts we received we actually still have. It's a wooden sled with a small painting of a man, presumably my dad, pulling me and my sister on the sled. We received this gift about 8 months a year before my mother passed away from cancer, so that made the painting on the sled very freaky in hindsight. My dad only told me this story once, and he denied he ever told me it when I asked him about it recently. If I can find the sled, I'll post a picture. It's very small and looks quite old.
Silent scan.
Worked at a public pool. I would work alone after hours cleaning the building and the pool. One night around 2 a.m. I'm cleaning the change rooms. The pool has been closed for 4 hours at this time. I hear the sound of a child's laughter and bare feet running across the pool deck. I go out and scan the area. There's nobody in sight. The doors are all closed and locked. There is nowhere a kid could be hiding. No wet footprints on the pool deck. I recheck the doors and the security monitors. I am the only person in the building. It was unsettling.
Silent scan.
When I was in my late 20s, I was dating my girlfriend's soon-to-be wife. We had been together for a while. One summer, July 3rd, her sister was abducted and killed by a group of 6 men. All the men were eventually caught and tried. The trials and the aftermath for the family were devastating and debilitating for them for many, many years. Fast forward 3 months after the funeral. I arrived at my girlfriend's house to wait for her to get off from her job as a nurse at a local hospital. Neither of her parents were home. Just me, alone in the house. So I went into the family room, turned on the TV, sat down in the couch, got comfortable and began to watch. Clear as a bell, I heard my girlfriend's sister's voice in my right ear, just off my shoulder, call my name. I turned to look at the seat next to me, and of course there was nobody there. I stared at the spot in the couch next to me for a long while. Feeling a bit uneasy, I turned off the TV and went outside to wait on the porch.
Silent scan.
My wife and I swear that our daughter used to talk to ghosts when she was a toddler. She was an only child at the time. First instance I remember was her telling me that she was talking to Nana. That's what I called my grandmother, who passed about 15 years before my daughter was born. My daughter was young, and so I hadn't even talked about Nana to her, so I showed her a picture and asked who she spoke to. There were 4 women, 3 of which I didn't even know, but without hesitation, she pointed to my Nana. Okay, no biggie. Some months later, my wife and I are trying for baby number 2. After my wife gets pregnant, my daughter is sitting next to her on the couch and puts her head on her belly and says, "Mommy, there's a baby in there." Okay, maybe that's coincidence. She overheard us saying something. A few weeks later, my wife miscarries. Maybe my daughter picked up on our sadness, who knows, but she again puts her head on her stomach and says, "Mommy, there's no baby in there anymore." Then, several months and one more, very early, miscarriage later, my daughter tells us, "I was talking to my brother last night, and he said that my sister is coming to live with me soon." Again, she's an only child and had no living brother. We were still trying at this point, but had not taken any tests. We picked one up that night, and sure enough, pregnant. When time came to reveal the gender, I wasn't even interested. My daughter had already said it was a girl. Sure enough, I have 2 daughters.
Silent scan.
I saw a reflection of myself at the end of a hallway in a friend's apartment building, only he told me the day after there was never any mirror in the hallways.
Silent scan.
I was visiting my mother after my dad died. She went shopping with her sister and left me alone. I heard my dad as plain as day up in his room. He got up from his computer chair, walked over to the door and opened it. He walked down the stairs and stood on the last step for a few seconds, before walking back up to his room and closing the door. I was probably 5 feet from him in the living room. I just froze. It scared the hell out of me. I'll be right there, God. I just gotta clean out this hard drive and search history before anyone else can see what I was into.
Silent scan.
I was 8 when my grandma died. I was sad. So around 2 months passed and I was going at grandma's house where my grandpa lives. So I wake up at 3 a.m. and hear footsteps from bedroom door. I froze. I saw my grandma walking up to me and she said, "Hello little sweetie," and walked away. It was not sleep paralysis because I could move my hands and feet. At morning I told to my grandpa about it and he said, "I've seen grandma almost every night. She likes to visit, so don't be scared next time when you visit."
Silent scan.
I was staying in the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, called the hotel that inspired Stephen King to write The Shining. Around 1 a.m. I heard what sounded like children running up and down the hallways interspersed with laughter. Opened the door to see what the hell was going on, and didn't see anything. Quick little buggers, I thought. Then the next morning when my so and I took a tour of the building, the guide stopped directly in front of our room to tell us the story of young girls. His ghosts can be heard running up and down that same hallway. My parents have stayed at the Stanley and experienced the exact same thing. Not super loud but clearly, kids playing in the hallway. When they checked out, the front desk person kept asking how things were during their stay. My mom kept saying things were fine with no problems, but the agent kept asking. So my mom finally said that if she had to say something, someone's kids were playing, but they were not disturbing them. That was when the agent told my parents that since it was end of season, they were the only people in that area, and no children were registered anywhere in the hotel. Apparently it happens all the time in that area of the building, and the agent was trying to see if they experienced it without asking a leading question about ghosts.
Silent scan.
I'm still not sure if I believe, but there have been some weird things in my life that I can't explain. When I was 5 years old, I woke up in the night and my grandma was standing at the end of my bed, wearing a teal blue skirt and a matching blouse. I remember that it was summer and the sky was still light, but not light enough for me to read, so I guess it was about 9 p.m. I sat up, she put her finger to her lips, and I rubbed my eyes a couple of times, 'cause sleepy, and when I looked back she had gone. I just snuggled back under my covers thinking how nice it was to see her, because I hadn't seen her for ages, and I hoped she would still be there when I woke up. Next morning, my house was eerily quiet. My mom was in a worse mood than normal, but she had been crying, so I asked her what was wrong. My grandma died the night before. She had been crossing a road after her bingo turned out, at 8:30 p.m., about 60 miles away from where we lived. She had a massive brain hemorrhage in the middle of the road, and didn't even make it to the other side, let alone to my house 60 miles away. She was wearing a teal blue skirt and matching blouse. Edit to say, stop telling me to tell my mum. I appreciate the sentiment, but she was an abusive piece of garbage, so I wouldn't want to engage with her if she wasn't dead.
Silent scan.
When I was in 5th grade I was playing with silly putty in my room when my mom called me down for dinner. I had molded it into a ball and placed it down directly behind me. I'm talking as soft as can be here. When I stood up to go downstairs, I felt something hit me in the back of my head with some force. So I turn around and see my silly putty ball, not on the ground anymore, but bouncing on my windowsill until it eventually rolled back onto the floor. Needless to say I ran downstairs hysterically trying to tell my mom what had happened.
Silent scan.
We were in the process of moving from an apartment over a business, and I told the landlord about an experience I had one night. I got up to go to the bathroom and in the hallway I saw 3 dark shadows moving along the wall, man-shaped, and it looked as if you could reach through them into an infinite void. I was terrified and started yelling, and my father came out of his bedroom to see what was the matter, and said I was dreaming it. I know to this day I wasn't. It was very distinct, and I was standing in the hallway. So as I tell the guy I am glad to leave the place, no offense, he tells me sincerely that years ago the shop was a bakery, and there was a fire that burned the place, and it was rented by 3 brothers who perished. He had the most bizarre look on his face trying to see if I was pranking him. Totally weirds me out to this day.
Silent scan.
When my son was a baby, he started crying in his crib at about 3 a.m. I sat up, dreading having to nurse him back to sleep for the 3rd time that night. All of a sudden, I hear a soft, sweet woman's voice over the baby monitor say, "SHHH, don't cry, go to sleep," and my son settled right down back to sleep. In my sleep-deprived state, I was like, cruel. She's got him, and I went back to sleep myself. When I woke up that morning, I was like, did I just let a ghost nanny take care of my baby? Can she come back tonight? She did not, but I did constantly see orbs fly around over his crib over the video monitor, which were clearly not bugs or dust.
Silent scan.
Seeing a ghost. I lived in a haunted house. I would see the previous owner in shadowy corners or in the attic window when I was outside. There was a black cat that would show up in the house and disappear, but I couldn't find where it was getting in or out. Sometimes I would leave the spoon in my coffee, and it would just start stirring itself. A fork left on the edge of a plate would fly through the air like someone smacked the end of it. Sometimes I would find the door to the little closet in the dining room open, and close it, and it would be open when I came back. Once I put a piece of furniture in front of it and I came back through the room and it was moved and the door was open again. I started saying, okay, I know you're here. If my coffee started stirring itself and the spoon would stop. Imagine you build a great house and then you die and you never want to leave, but maybe you don't know you are dead and everyone just ignores you. But maybe you don't know you are dead and everyone just ignores you. I like to imagine that the ghosts are freaking out once they realize they are dead and raging around the room, and some of that energy moves stuff around the room.
Silent scan.